Deon Sanders leaving Jackson State University for the University of Colorado Buffaloes has gotten a lot of attention the last few days. I have found the backlash pretty interesting that he's received, mainly from the black community for leaving Jackson State. To be honest, I have no dog in this fight. I personally can be very objective about this since I don't care about Colorado University or Jackson State. So I just want to go into details about this. So just from the backlash, what I'm gathering is that I'm just going to read some quotes from Bomani Jones, who is a famous sports broadcaster, radio type of personality. I wouldn't say really that famous, but if you watched ESPN over the years, you know who Bomani Jones is. He's a black guy, bald black dude. He's been on ESPN a lot of times on shows like Pardon the Interruption and other shows like that. So if you don't know who he is, just look him up. I'm just going to read a few of his quotes. This really struck out to me. So Bomani said this on CNN. He sold a dream and then walked out of the dream. People have the right to be critical of that. He then, quote unquote, said, the right time would be. I'm going to read this quote again. This is a different one. So Bomani Jones said this right here. He explicitly said that the God sent him to coach at an HBCU. So then when you leave, yeah, people are going to ask questions. Okay. And here's what Bomani Jones said about Deon. He went in and sold the big dream, implying that basically that Deon was trying to sell a vision that wasn't achievable. So this is what I gather, that Deon Sanders had just engulfed himself with the fans of Jackson State, which were mainly black people, since this is the HBCU, and just the black community was enamored with his success over there. I'm sure there's a lot of racial pride that he was uplifting a black school that didn't have any notoriety until he came there. So he was bringing a lot of great publicity. They were successful with him as a coach. So I'm sure it was very inspirational for the black community, and there was a lot of pride in that. He also was able to talk a big game to them. I've always felt Deon Sanders oozes with a lot of charisma. If you looked up charisma in the dictionary, you would find his name underneath there. Just, he has a lot of charisma. I'm not a fan of his, but he's very good at selling himself. He could definitely sell himself in front of any audience with his outgoing personality. Just, it's a lot of energy. Like, he could get you to believe just about anything. Hell, I think he could just sell people that eating shit is healthy. Just, he has that type of personality. So I think a person like that can talk a great game, it's kind of like a player in the sense that they could talk a great game to a woman and then use the woman to dump her, and she didn't see it coming because she just fell for the lines. And I think Deon did that with Jackson State and the fans. But I can see it from the other angle too. I can see it from his angle that that Jackson State is not the ideal place to work. That he had long-term goals of being a NCAA Division I football coach. He wanted that badly, and he didn't feel that Jackson State was an adequate place for him to be at for his goals to accomplish them. One thing I'll say, I have been to some HBCU schools in the past. I went to a public university, and I can tell you there's a huge difference between a public university and HBCU. I would say about several years ago, when I was doing Uber part-time, I would drive some kids off to their HBCU schools. There's a lot of colleges that are in my area. But I'll say this, the public universities, hands down, was on another level than the HBCUs that I saw. It was my first time seeing them, to be honest, HBCUs, and I was just shocked at how bad and decrepit they looked. The facilities were garbage. They were just so run down, and they were just over, I would say 100 miles to a few hundred miles just below being at a regular public university. So you could definitely feel it, man. You don't have the adequate facilities, I feel, at these schools. And I'm not trying to talk bad about them, but if you had to choose between working at these schools versus working at a public university, you're going to take it. You're definitely going to take it. I think for these schools to be competitive, they would have to offer the same amount of money just to have a chance to keep someone that they find that is a valuable asset. Like they found Deon to be a valuable asset because of all the stuff he brought to the school. And I feel Deon left because he was looking for more opportunities, obviously. But money plays a huge role in this. I think from what I'm reading right here, Deon was making $300,000 a year at Jackson State University, whereas the Colorado deal is reported that to be 5 years, 29.5 million. So he's making around like 5.5 million a year, close to that, somewhere in that range. So that's a lot of money. That's a huge jump from 300K to 5.5 million a year. I don't think many people, regardless of race, could turn down that type of money. You just got to ask yourself that question at your own job. Like, would you not leave your job if you could work at a better facilities and you had a huge salary increase? Hell, most people will take working at crappier facilities if they just get paid more money. But you get both. You get both. Who would not leave? That's just to be honest. So I can understand why he left. If I was in his shoes, I would have done the same thing. I would have fled. But I could also understand the other side of it, that people being hurt because Deon is a salesman. He knows how to sell crap. He knows how to use people for his own game. He's always been about himself. I'm not convinced that he's a legit great coach from what I've heard, that he had a huge advantage recruiting wise at Jackson State. I think that advantage goes out of the window now that he's a Division I coach. He's going to have to compete with all these powerhouse schools to get the best talent. So I think that'll be a challenge. We'll see if he can do it, but he's always been about himself. This is all about him promoting himself. I just think some of the fans, I would say, of Jackson State University and just the black community as a whole missed that part about him, that this guy has always been about himself his whole entire career, his whole entire life. He loves the spotlight. He loves attention, and he'll keep going to different platforms to get that attention and that spotlight. So people shouldn't be surprised by this, but I can see the hurt too on the black community, that they can't. Deon leaving Jackson State to going to a public university that's white run is like kind of like symbolism, I feel, probably for them, that as a black person that you can't have black institutions be on the same level as successful white institutions. So there's that underlying pain there. But ultimately, I don't think Deon's a good guy. I don't think he's a good person. I've always viewed him as Snake's oilsman, but I can't knock him for leaving. Just logically, I think most people would have done the same thing in this situation. So that's the way I look at it.